A very good night, Babishans, and all of our viewers across the very many other strings that we have attached to this live program. We have here tonight Dr. Vince Adams and myself, who will be carrying tonight's program. We might have Basdeo coming on a little later. We have had a very tough day because the majority of it, we had our national executive meeting. And I just want to read a statement as to what transpired at that national executive meeting of the Alliance for Change. We concluded that meeting today and renewing our commitment to ensuring that a fair and equitable dispensation of our natural resources be to the benefit for all Guyanese. The meeting included presentations from myself, leader of the AFC, who discussed, I discussed, of course, the present political and economic situation, the high cost of living, the high inflation rates we got, the internal infights of the PPP, Irfan Ali versus Donald Ramotar, and so on now, the party's bad governance, especially concerning the Exxon contract and the Exxon audit, and discrimination in infrastructural contracts. I also indicated to the party's activists to be seen more publicly, despite we know the PPP's victimization and fear that they're driving, and especially those AFC members who are public servants and are otherwise engaged in government. Chairperson of the AFC, Kathy Hughes, also reported to the national executive the successful meeting they had with the U.S. Congressional Black Caucus and the party's participation in the Diaspora Conference in Washington, D.C. The AFC's regional representatives, who had to also give reports, highlighted the and the resulting low quality and substandard infrastructure works. The consistency of this issue across all regions and the incidence of corrupt practices continues to be most alarming. Of grave concern were reports from our representatives from Region 1, 3, 7, 8, and 9 of the large number of Venezuelans who are residing in these regions, supposedly undocumented. At least that's the official word from some of the representatives around, government representatives. But we are having substantiated reports being received of these Venezuelans overrunning especially Region 1, including the Warao district, and PPP officials preparing birth certificate forms for these Venezuelans at the office of the Prime Minister's representative there in Region 1. The Alliance for Change notes with grave concern this occurrence, given our sensitive elections matters, which this issue will concern, and also the border controversy with Venezuela. Now, as part of the AFC's discussion on the way forward, the party stressed the need for constitutional reform, especially in post-elections coalition, and the need for legislation to facilitate biometrics and the residency requirement for a new voters list, all prior to the next national and regional elections. Vince, you were there and you participated in the entire full 5 hours of our National Executive Committee meeting. I want you to also bring out some of the emphasis that these Region 1 reps made in connection to this Venezuelan migration, and then the use of those Venezuelans for certain dangerous preparation of certificate forms, birth certificate forms.
Yeah, Kemraj, I think everyone unanimously, we agree that this here is a serious situation, even a serious threat to the country that we hope that the government pays attention to. You bring folks over, and apparently they're coming unimpeded or not following some kind of a process. So here you are, Venezuela, they're taught from, I guess, from the time they're born that Essequibo belongs to them. And now they've even upped the ante with the referendum and everything else. But they were trained, they were taught. So even those people who are coming over the border, they grew up with the belief, without even knowing the history, with the belief that their security belongs to them. So let's look at this scenario after a while, after a year or two. And remember, Essequibo is probably one of our least populated counties. It is the least populated county. So it's easy for, in the near future, for us to have a majority Venezuelans. There's nothing wrong with, I think we've always been very generous in accommodating folks from the rest of the islands. I mean, that was the history of this country. You remember in the good old days when folks from Barbados and Trinidad, we used to accommodate them. So we've had a history of this. But this here is a kind of a different situation. You could just imagine we may have a kind of a Eastern Ukraine, where Russia is having a legitimate reason, Crimea and Eastern Russia, a lot of Russian people of Russian origin, and that was the excuse that Putin used to invade Ukraine, the eastern part of Ukraine. And not only did they invade Crimea now they've declared that as part of Russia. So here you are, after a while, having Venezuelans, they're settled in Essequibo, and then suddenly the population has gotten more Venezuelans than Guyanese. And then even the Venezuelans that are there are believing that this is their land.
That's correct.
So what could be a better excuse and reason for an invasion? Because they're threatening it already.
Yes.
For Venezuela to invade. So it's a very serious situation. And then, of course, the other part of it is the politics in terms of Kemal, you and others, since you guys are on the ground and know what's going on, mention a few things that are happening that are not following the legal system as to how it should be done, and to have people even registered or claim, there is this claim that could be false claims, that these people were even birthed in Essequibo to get them, who knows, to pad the voters list. So those are the kinds of issues that we discussed today at our meeting. And it would, I think unanimously we agree that this is a very serious matter, that the government, if they really do believe and understand the issue, should be paying very, very careful attention. And we need to make sure that this whole, on the political side now, in terms of a threat of invasion and those type of things, and we're not making this up. Venezuela has made it clear, even if it's it's just a bluff. Nevertheless, you have to take these things seriously when people are threatening to cross your borders. I even read, I don't know if it's factual or not, that they're conducting military exercises right on our border. I think I read it someplace in the newspaper.
Kaito News.
So we've got to take those things very, very seriously. So we had a really good discussion today, and I think the folks at AFC and the executives are very, very serious, and we're gonna. That's why we're making this public, that we take it seriously, and we implore upon the government to also take it seriously.
That is true. The numbers are growing, and to the extent that we have heard that a minimum of 35,000 might be in the country. And quite frankly, they're not only in these regions that we mentioned, 1, 3, 7, 8, and 9. You go to Georgetown, there are certain spots where there are large clusters of Venezuelans. You go to Quarantine, and you find them working in the clubs and the rum shops and doing all manner of activities. Now, I hope that they're being documented. But from what we are now hearing from our representatives is this very serious thing. And that is a number of them who were never born in Guyana, but who have now come across birth certificates going to be given to them simply because there is a law that was passed in 2021 indicating that late registration of Guyanese births can now be done by the two shows, simply stating an affidavit that he is well aware that indeed this person was born some 20 years ago in Guyana and he's a Guyanese. And that person will get a birth certificate, and that birth certificate now can make that person, if she is 18 and over, a voter. And this is where you can have a gerrymandering of the constituencies, as it were, by virtue of dragging in those who can now vote as a result of this legislative device, the two shows having that kind of thing. And these are some of the areas that, like Region 8 and Region 7 and so on, whereby the APNU, AFC, and the PPP were very close. As a matter of one time, one vote, the APNU, AFC won by in that Region 8, I think it was, and so on. So it is important now if they stack it up with some Venezuelans who they're going to pay, and they got big money inside of the war chest. Them contractor boys, we understand, giving huge amounts of money.
All right.
You know,
take care. All right. Thanks for coming.
For purposes of getting contracts, and we're going to come to that later on. So if they could fix them up nicely and tell them to vote for them, that could be a very dangerous development. The opposition is not going to take it that easy, because that is rigging long before the elections is called. And so that is why we came out with this statement that we note with grave concern this sensitive matter for two reasons: the strategic border controversy, and also for political reasons and so on. And of course, the PPP likes to win elections, and they could do all manner of things. This is one such thing that they obviously will be doing. Now, it is important too that we had lots of other developments. We see the discrimination in infrastructure contracts. We had some fellas like Tipu, what's the fella named? Critic, getting a big $888 million contract. And one of the requirements for the contract to be awarded to him was that his company must be 3 years and older, having done contracts of this sort, building pumping stations or other infrastructural works. Now we realize, by virtue of a tremendous piece of investigation and information gathering by David Patterson, former GS, and a member who participated in today's meeting, that this fella that owns the Tipu construction company formed this company last year. So he could not have gotten 3 years experience in contractor work to build a pumping station, which is an obviously complex kind of construction. It is not your ordinary little house or whatever it is. You got to make sure that you deal with the foundation and so many things you would know as an engineer. But there it is. Even Jagdeo's comrade, Donald Ramutar, now saying things about how could this happen under the PPP administration. And we have people like Irfan Ali condemning him for making a statement, expressing himself as a former president, that look, these contracts must be awarded better. As a matter of fact, he was calling for a state construction company. I disagree with that. We know that the awarding of contract must be done by institutions that are comprised of professionals, independents, and bright people from all across the political divide. That is not happening, it would seem. And that is why the instructions are from the People's Progressive Party, now controlled by Bar Jagdeo and the rest, as to who and who to give contracts. And all over the place we see the Tipu guy with Jagdeo as if he now is the chairman of the board. I notice they're sitting around all over the place. It seems that Tipu now is now the chairman of the board for contracts. Look, this thing is very dangerous. And by the way, a number of genuine contractors, legitimate contractors, those who have engineering capacities, those who have done the things for years, for decades, they are not winning any of the contracts. And that is why we are getting substandard works all across the place. Substandard works in roads and bridges and in other infrastructure. Barbicians, that is not what you voted for. You have to understand that this corrupt PPP is here again, and it is doing worse than prior to 2015. Worse. And you yourselves know it. As a matter of fact, they rushed down today to, I understand, see the works that they have done, first of all, at Rosal factory. I don't know if they commissioned the factory yet, but the reports from DPI saying how they have now toured, the President Ali toured around the factory. He didn't commission the factory, probably realized that something not right, but he toured around. And then they also went to, after touring around, they also went to East Bank, Berbice, Mara, and so on. And I understand so many people start criticizing them, stating that what is happening with cost of living, why we can't get 2 square meals a day because the salaries and the wages are so low and the inflation is so high, cost of living is so high. I understand they got a terrible time at Mara and all the other villages that they are there. But they don't want to write about those. They go on to talk about how it is testament of their constructing this and that and whatever. The trouble is they're in serious shape. Mr. Infa Ali, Dr. Infa Ali, as he liked to be called, is indicating to them that we have to bear patience, more patience. Well, you know, I want to say that the Barbicians are getting smarter by the day. A number of them, like the sugar estate workers from Rosal there, that had that big protest demonstration. I understand the matter is on the Monday again. I will be there for them. But they have been indicating too that they need a better financial package. But all the financial packages are going to their friends and family in Berbice that got these companies that they created last year or the year before for big, big money. And the people are telling me who and which minister children and so on getting all these contracts. And you know, when we ask at a parliamentary level, Barbicians, when we ask for the contracts, who got the award and for how much and how long and so on, this person was building or doing construction work and so on, they do not want to give us. Chedi Jagan used to tell the PPP inside that you must give the information to the opposition. When he was around, be transparent. Now they're ducking all the information. You can't get none. And we know, because we are going to develop an information network to ensure that we get all the contracts and who and so on. But we understand that there is an element of that PPP now, a very corrupt element, that is asking them for a 10%, 20% commission, and it's using that now to store it up in their war chest, ready for the 2025 or late 2024 elections. And that is what they're doing.
Yep.
And that is why I want to make the point too, that it's all being led by its general secretary. Barbicians must know that he loves to talk about elections. And up to now, 7th year now, he hasn't had PPP elections. That fella, who loves to talk about the elections at other places and so on. Since 2017 or thereabouts, he hasn't had elections for the PPP. And I want the membership and so on of the PPP to ensure that would not have happened under Chedi Jagan's general secretaryship. That would not have happened under Donald Ramotar's general secretaryship. But it has happened under Jagdeo. He don't want his people to change him as general secretary or anything of the sort. So
Yep.
understand it.
Yep. Numbers don't lie. I come from an engineering background, and numbers is where I and people like myself make a living. We are not, and with all due respect to my good friend here, comrade, lawyers can spin things. We don't have any leeway. Science is science. Numbers are numbers. 2 + 2 or 4. Now, Nigel Hughes has done a study, and the study is clear. Until now, there's no dispute of the numbers. You hear all these excuses but nobody has disputed those numbers, where it's about what, 80%. About 80% of these contracts in terms of numbers and values are going to one set of people, and it's about what, 5% of the contractors or the people that it's going to. So these again are the majority of the people. That is why nothing is coming down to a lot, even their own supporters. Even I've been in contact with a lot of supporters that are complaining, the same people who voted for the PPP, a lot of them, because most of them, the Indians are in business, and a lot of them are not seeing any of the contracts even coming to them. It's just their big friends and family, the rich folks. Now, so you can't dispute the numbers. If somebody has numbers that they can dispute, well, we welcome it. We welcome it. Something to dispute what Nigel you said. And then, I remember, I think it was Nigel's data also, when it shows, I think it's in Babis, in Region 5, out of 27 roads, what was it, 5 or 2 or whatever it is was, in a black area. And then the vice president himself, what he said, what was his comeback? Well, we're going to get there sometime. That's what he said. We're going to get to those communities sometime, which is admitting that the black community does not have priority. So, and now the other thing, and I've experienced it firsthand when I was heading the EPA, and I'm sure Kemraj and other folks who had big projects, NPTAB, and I know a little bit about contract. Trust me, I've been 30 plus years in the United States government, and the one thing we had to know about was how to develop contracts, write contracts, manage contracts, audit contracts. We had to get refresher training at least once a year. We manage those contracts, and the one thing that you make sure it's in the procurement. We had entire departments in the procurement. We even had the procurement department. We would normally, for every contract, we would have, a board, the selection board, and they remained anonymous. Nobody knew who that selection board was. And if anybody is caught, whether it's on the staff or on our board, that leaked information to anybody about as to who these people are, you get fired, or you could be taken, you could be prosecuted. So, and then we had an independent government estimate team with specialists to say, well, okay, here's what it's supposed to cost. If you're building a bridge, you get bridge export. Here's what we think is going to cost. So when the bids come in, that team looks at it and say, well, okay, they might have an innovative way of doing it differently to how you make your estimate, and you adjust your estimate if they've got a better idea. But at least you know how much it's going to cost. So you're not just looking at a list that says this is high or this is low, and pick the lowest or the middle. You look at what's reasonable. It could be in the middle. It could be the highest bid. You never, you don't go and just take the lowest bid. You look for the best quality bid, and it could very well be the lowest, or it could very well be the highest. But under the coalition government, NPTAB, and I can't remember the guy who ran NPTAB, and I thought the guy was even, I even knew the guy. I can't remember his name. Really nice guy. He and I get along great, but he did not even cut me any slack when we took a project. And I thought that we had bureaucracy in the United States, but he had twice as much. But nevertheless, he did not cut anybody any slack. They dotted every I, crossed any T, not once but twice. So when they come out and they, when they make their award and they say this is it, it takes forever. But nevertheless, they scrutinized it, and it wasn't about friends and families, because I experienced that, and I'm sure Kemraj and all the
Yeah,
other who had projects. NPTAB to me was a pain, but it was a good pain, because when they're done, you're protected. You cannot, that's what it is. You have confidence in
that's
it.
correct.
But nowadays, it's just like I said, friends and families that Nigel data
That's
reflects.
correct.
So that's the big difference between then in the coalition and now. There's no way that critic would be getting any contract on the NP tab. I guarantee you, it would never happen,
Yeah.
because there's a list of criteria, which is what David Patterson is asking for. There are a list of criteria that you have to satisfy, qualifications, etc. A whole list of things that you've got to check these boxes. So I would like this,
Yeah.
which is what David Patterson is asking for. Where does that application package show that this guy qualified to do this job? I think it even said that you had to show, what was it, 3 years of experience.
That's correct. Yeah.
Where does he, I don't know. The only thing that anybody saw, even he hadn't denied, by the way.
That's
You
right.
know what was his comeback? Was it his reasoning that that somehow the politician don't want Douglas people. That was his thing. They want Douglas people to make a buck. I think that was what his,
that is what his reasoning was.
yeah.
So frivolous and
Yep.
unmeritorious. But in that same coalition administration, we had also a working operation at the Procurement Commission. Everybody who feel that they did not have justice, they could have gone to the Procurement Commission, and it was professional
An
enough,
appeal.
made up
Yep.
with Ms. Corbyn and a number of
Yes.
high-quality people. And I remember a very major contract was the Mazaruni prison. And I remember the award was so heavily scrutinized, and NABI, along with a Trinidadian firm, won. And a very big other firm, Guyanese firm, my good friend BK Tiwari, they felt that there was an injustice to it. And they did what is called a complaint, and the complaint was heard, and a judgment was written up by the members of the commission as to why it was granted properly to Nabi and Sons. Okay? And the Nabi and Sons, of course, is one of the big experienced contracting firms. I think they made Cultural Center and did a whole lot of work and so on. But Brian Tiwari also did a lot of exceptional work. But they feel pipped, and they said they're going to go make the complaint. And when the complaint was heard, they then understood. What we are having now is absolutely no information, and I am understanding too that our procurement commission is presently constituted sometimes get on into a lot of irrelevancies and so on.
Yes.
And it is not dealing with the complaints. I hope that this David Patterson complaint in relation to the Tipu Construction Company, we're going to hear something about. And, of recent times, I understand that it is in our press conference, you did make some constructive criticism of Justice Roxanne George's, Chief Justice Roxanne George's decision. And of all people, Jack, they'll start cussing you down that you interfering with the independence of the judiciary. At least you are decent in your language. You are very temperate in your language. You are constructively critical of the decision as an engineer and indicating environmental expert as polluter pays principle and all of that, and why there might be some flaw in her decision. That fella, if you didn't know, Barbicians, when Mr. Justice Kissoon gave that decision in relation to unlimited insurance, that man went and tell Justice Kissoon that you don't know no law. This judge know no law. And he really attacked in a very contemptuous manner the judge. And, the judge should have put a contempt proceedings against him. But this is how we get along. And we have you making some very solid points in relation to a judgment that you read, because we got the judgment and you constructively critiqued it. That is allowable as part of freedom of expression. It is not as if judges are above the law to the extent that nobody could be critical of their judgments. in the academics, the judicial reviews, the various reviews, bar reviews, the modern law review, criminal law review. A lot of academics attack big judges in England and America and all over the place. And they could get some serious attacks now and again. But of all people, Jack, they're now attacking you. And he's so vexed. He's saying that you are the darling of the public press and all of that. Well, it's because you say sensible things, Dr. Vince Adams. He, as a, I don't know if he's a quack doctor, he just don't say anything sensible. And he jump around all over the place, cussing me, cussing you, cussing everybody. And that's the Jack deal. He should not have been in the political landscape. As I have argued so many times, our constitution indicates that after 2 terms, and he served a half term of Janet Jagan, he should go pasture. But the man wants to be in charge of the political party called the PPP. He wants to be in charge of the presidency and so on. That is why he could do all manner of things and find scapegoats in relation to an audit. Remember that IHS audit?
Yeah.
I would want you to talk a thing or two and explain to the Barbicians that IHS Markit audit and how they embarrass themselves and now they don't want to take blame either of the Barretts, Vikram or Jagdeo. They gone and put it on a little boy called Bobby Gosai.
Yep.
You want to mention something about that?
Well, let me first of all mention this thing about the decision by the honorable judge. You know, I've got some friendly advice from my friend, Mr. Jagdeo. If he wants to be a darling of anything, he needs to be a nice person. Yeah. It's a badge of honor for anybody to call me a darling of anything. At least that is showing that I'm a nice person. So if he's envious of me, that's okay. All he can do is change his style and be somebody that is honest and trustworthy rather than being a dictator and an autocrat, because people recognize that. And that is why, you know, he's not a darling of the media. I am, because everything I say it in all honesty, and I say it from a base of knowledge and integrity from my background. So that's the difference. So my advice to him is to just you know, let him develop those attributes rather than just getting jealous and cussing out. Develop those attitudes, and maybe at least one person, except for Sue, may hold you as a darling. You know, Sue and them, I'm sure that you've got at least one darling in Sue. But anyway, the other thing with reference to that and everything that I said, until now, he nor nobody can dispute anything that I said. I mean, who else could have been better placed to speak on that topic? I was the one. First of all, he can't tell me that I'm not qualified. My PhD is in environmental engineering, and I've got high qualifications in petroleum, and experience and academics. So you cannot touch that. On top of that, I was the one who wrote the regulations into the EPA permit. So who else would know it better than I do? Who else would know the principle of polluter pay principle better than I do? So he cannot criticize or say anything about, you know, dispute the facts. So he comes up with all of these flimsy stuff. But, you know, it's a badge of honor for him to be saying that I'm a darling, which means that the media, you know, who are sensible people, they trust what I say. That's so right. You know, he all he's got to do is just change his attitude rather than cussing down every night, and he even he's in the habit of even abusing down the media. You know, he targets them, and you can't even ask him a simple question. I was asked a nice question by the media. I responded in a very civil and courteous manner and respectful manner. But he does the opposite. So if you want to become a darling of the media and be respectful, you know, just follow those. In terms of the audit, well, I don't think, and this is a good example, I don't think anybody believes all this Nancy story about him not being involved and making decisions. Now, look, people from Berbice and all over the country, y'all know this man much better than I do. So you know what anybody really do believe that Exxon, a big powerful international company, is gonna go to some low level operative, an employee, and just take their word for it and take their direction that we should cut this thing back from 240 million to 3 million. I mean, that's ridiculous. But he believes again that he's arrogated himself to this all and powerful individual, and nobody questions what he says, or everybody believes what he's saying. So we were all stupid. So that's the first thing that I don't think a single individual, again, except for his little cohorts who want to believe, but even they do not believe it. So here's how an audit works. Like I said before, I've been on both sides of audit. I mean, big audits. When you set up the audit teams, let's say the government, in most cases, the government is doing the audit. You decide you want an audit. In this case, the Ghana government, under the coalition, decided to go to IHS Markit and say, we want you to audit, because the government don't have the capacity. So you go hire an international renowned company. Is not no fly-by-night company. That's what they do for a living. And they've got to protect the reputation. From the very first meeting that you meet with Exxon, you've got a incoming meeting. You decide on the questions. Well, of course, the government has the questions. You decide on the questions, and you decide on the process on day one. And you say on these questions, you hand this person, you pair off specialists. Let's say the part that says drilling, the government, the IHS Markit is going to have somebody who's specialized in drilling, and then Exxon is going to produce their drilling export. So for the rest of the thing, the two of them are going to be working together. The same thing, somebody else is going to be finance. You have the two finance people. So all the questions and all the documents have to be provided during those discussions. Nobody else knows the documents and receipts and everything that is supposed to be provided than those specialized. And what you do at the end of it, you submit it, and then you put the entire package together containing everything you have from the input from these sub-teams, if you will. So this whole thing about Exxon saying that they don't have, they can't find this and they can't
documents.
When the report comes in from IHS Markit, that's the final report. The only thing that you do after then, because it's the exports input, is when you send that draft to Exxon, the only thing that you do, you finesse the language to not let it sound too bad sometimes. You hardly ever change the numbers, because the exports put those numbers together. And if the IHS Markit exports see that that's what they believe and that's what they came up with, the guy on the Exxon side already know.
Yes.
So this whole thing about, we're reviewing, that's BS. All you do, you try to change the language. Instead of saying, this is fraud, for example, you say, okay, we can't, the data was unavailable. So, you try to compromise on the language, but it has nothing to do, especially when you're getting from 214 to 3 million. But what is happening, Exxon knows that that's the way you do audits, except that they're taking advantage of the compromised position of this government. That's what's going on here. And they believe that it would have been ducked. Don't forget, folks, that this thing was not something that was revealed to the public by the government, which is what they have to do. This was leaked. Had it not been leaked, it probably would have been sitting there and nobody would have even known what happened. But let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the numbers, because everybody focusing on this 107 million that we're supposed to have. The 13%, because it's a 13% difference. And this is only for $1.7 billion. We have right now in the pipeline, we've already approved projects. I think the sixth one is going to add up to $55 billion.
US dollars.
US dollars. So 13% of 55 billion, our take, what we would be losing would be $7.2 billion if you use
That's
that.
Right.
7.2 billion. So don't focus on this 107 million. Look at the 7.2 billion. if we use this trend. And by the way, that 13%, it's a low number, but let's accept it's 13% difference. So we start with and here's the other thing you got to be worried about. This was the easiest audit. Yeah. This was the initial audit that didn't have any drilling. It didn't have any complicated contracts and charging. This was the easiest audit. So you can imagine the rest of audits to come after this one, where it's really gotten complicated, where you have drilling, you have contractors out to the wazoo and everything else. There's a very, very big chance if you get a credible company to do the audit, it's going to even be more than that 7-point-something billion that I told you about. So this here is a serious matter. And I want to read, just if you believe that let me just to prove to you what I'm talking about. Here is the list of here's what the audit says. It says this is a contract. It says the contractor, so all of this excuse about them not having documents, you have to keep your documents on a daily basis.
That's right.
Here's what the audit says. Under the section 1.2 of Annex C, accounting procedure, documentation required to be submitted by the contractor. That's the heading. The contractor shall, it doesn't say may, shall keep the accounts, operating records, reports, and statements relating to the petroleum operation. And here's a list. It says, in such a form as may be agreed from time to time between the parties, which shall identify the categories of costs, expenses, expenditures, and credit classified in another section. And then here is some of the things. Production statements, value of production and pricing statement. Listen to that. Value of production and pricing statement. Statement of expenditure and receipts. Cost recovery statement. End of year statement. Budget statement. So they should be keeping this on a daily basis. So this whole thing, well, we didn't have records. That is all absolute nonsense. This
for a big company like them,
especially a company like Exxon, it's right here in the contract. And the contract is supposed to be sanctified, by the way. We hear that all the time. So you tell me they're not following this now? When
the sanctity of contract doesn't apply to that now.
Yeah, it doesn't apply to the audits. And by the way, I talk about the 7-point-something billion and the 55 billion that is in the pipeline. Of course, we've got other projects coming online. But the contract calls for an audit every year. And it's not it's an audit. At the end of the year, when they submit their statements, the minister, you have 2 years to initiate an audit. So we've got a bunch of audits. That one, I think, ran up to the first one was 2017. October
1999 to 2017.
2017. So then now you've got the audit because that's only October, and this is go through so you still have a portion of 2017, which should have been done by the end of 2019. You've got a 2018 audit. You've got a 2019 audit. You've got a 2020 audit, the 2021 audit, the 2022 audit. And so what is the status of all of those audits? We ain't hearing nothing. We ain't hearing nothing about these audits.
You're breaking up a little. You're breaking up a little. I want to say, yeah, Vince, you're breaking up somewhat. I don't know what is happening.
You hear me good now? Am I okay?
Yeah, you broke up at the last part there.
Okay.
Yeah, you're being heard a little better now.
What I was saying, the contract calls for an audit at the end of every year. So here you have, we've done the up to October 2017, I think. So you've got 2017 audit to go. You got 2018 audit, 2019 audit, 2020 audit, 2021 audit, 2022 audit. So we've got like 7 audits, but you're hearing anything about these audits. We hadn't even started. And remember, you've got 2 years. So what if this contract there's sanctity in this contract? Exxon is probably going to say here, your 2 years has passed. I don't have to abide by you coming on audit. So that's the dilemma we're in. And who knows what's behind that. So we're focusing on this 107, which is very important because it opens everybody's eyes. But we better open our eyes even bigger for the big numbers,
That's
and
correct.
to be doing these 7 audits every single year that should be done. We should be holding the government accountable to be doing. But you're hearing nothing about them. You're hearing nothing about anything, even preparing about it. So let's keep our eyes on the prize and let's look at the big picture.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is where they are masters of distracting our gaze away from the prize. Jagdeo is a master of that. He can confuse people and talk all kind of nonsense, and the core issue will then melt into thin air. And
Yep.
that is what we must not allow him to do, because, of course, we have the competencies in the Alliance for Change to do that.
Hey, Cameron, I want to, let us, especially in Region 5, there's a sensitive issue about the battlegrounds that they're tearing up in Region 5.
Yeah.
That they're friends just to get dirt. I mean, how uncaring could you be? I mean, it's one thing to be uncaring of poor people, because that's what, I mean, the vice president himself has said that. He said that all the opposition talks about is feeding the poor. That's what he said. He said
As if that is not what you should be doing. That's the priority of a government.
Exactly. That should be, you would think that. So if that's not convincing to folks that this here is just for the rich, the 5% rich or so, and now in West Berbice, to get dirt for some construction project that some one of their friends or party members have, to get dirt or material for that construction project, it maybe it's even critic construction project, but to get dirt for that construction project, they're now tearing up the cemetery. They cannot find tombs of the dead. And these are not, by the way, these are, when I looked at the video, every single person there, they were Indians. It's not
Yes.
which is the party, supposed to be the party core base. So it's not a case where they're not even discriminating when it comes to greed.
Mhm.
So folks, again, keep your eyes open, because this here is just despicable, that what they're doing.
I want to raise another issue in connection with what the PPP has commenced suggesting to members of the public. Nandalal, the Attorney General, is now saying that he's going to deny accessibility to the court by increasing what is called costs and a whole lot of other application fees to get to the court. He's saying that too many unmeritorious matters are being filed. And to that extent, he wants the courts are now being bogged down with unmeritorious cases. And as a result, he's suggesting that he's going to get some law which is now going to say that the cost should be far more, and a number of other things that could then kind of shut the gate into accessibility for the courts. Now, that is a fundamental violation, in my view, of what is called the rule of law. Fundamental. And let me tell you something, a lot of the unmeritorious cases are even being brought by the Attorney General. Remember, there was a case the other day, the Jordan case, whereby he has to now pay, I think, $2.5 million in cost. I hope he paid the cost. I hope he paid the cost.
He's got enough money, Cameron. He's got, even if he can't think it's, I'm sure Sue could help him out. Sue rent alone is gonna suffice.
But the state always, by virtue of this unbalanced nature, state and citizen, the citizen is always poorer. And there is always a disproportionate capacity with citizens to bring actions. And that is why you got to kind of ensure that the costs are not prohibitive for people to bring court actions. And he, in the process of living up to their political purposes of trying to exclude actions being brought against them, they might now exclude ordinary citizens from bringing cases, because these applications will now cost so much more money as filing fees and a whole host of other things. And then at the end of it, cost being so much more that would be that will have to be ordered by the High Court. So it could then dent or dampen the vigor with which litigants want to bring their actions against government, especially against government, because he can get the 2.5 to pay. But if you increase that cost and so on now to 2.5 for litigants who will lose, knowing very well that they have a chance, and the best thing about court systems too, it has a political purpose. The judiciary, there is a political purpose behind it. Instead of people fighting up out there and killing each other over, let's say, a disputed land or whatever, they go to the court. The court provides an institutional setup and framework for disputants, rather than the disputant second cutlass and go and chop up everybody or chop up who they feel the injustice has been done against them and so on. So it is important that you do not lock the gates in relation to accessibility to the court. Otherwise, you can have lots more non-judicial methods of remedying disputes out there and so on. And
well,
it could be
here's it from a non-lawyer, Kemraj. What it does, it's intimidation.
Yeah.
Of the ordinary person, is to intimidate them from not filing anything, let's say, against the government. And here's the disadvantage. What he's saying here, that if you file a frivolous lawsuit, you had to pay a price for it, in terms of costs and those type of things. However, if he files a frivolous lawsuit, guess who would pay?
It's taxpayers.
It's the taxpayers. So that's where, you see, so he doesn't have anything to lose. But at the same time, he's somehow gaining by the intimidation of ordinary people who are scared now to file lawsuits, even though they may have a strong case. They're worried, but that's the kind of autocratic behavior of these guys that people need to stand up. We're losing our freedom of expression and freedom of speech, and so that's, to me, as a non-lawyer, is, he knows, they know what they have nothing to lose. There's just the ordinary man who they're gonna scare to death to file anything, even though they may have a case, they still have a little, worry, well, if we lose, then they're gonna have to pay a price. However, if he can file how many frivolous lawsuits that he wants, because when he loses and it's frivolous, not a dime comes out of his pocket. It's the government, where it's the taxpayers. You're paying twice, both for him and yourself. If it's frivolous, he ain't paying a dime.
No, that's a strong point. And I want to say that these points will have to be taken up by the Bar Association, the Berbice Bar, the Women Lawyers Association, and also civil society, because a lot of issues are now being raised by Transparency International. Institute Guyana, that they have filed actions. We have like the Melinda Janke people who have been filing actions and so on. And these are the people I think that they are motivated against, are directing and targeting, because ordinarily you had this long setup system whereby you allow people to come to court and the judges will make their order as to cost and so on. But this chap wants to now interfere with that discretion and a whole host of other things.
What I would suggest, Kemraj, if in that proposed bill, I would suggest, and you see how quickly you would take it off, is to say that like he himself, the Attorney General will be held liable
personally
also for any frivolous laws, not the taxpayers. If the Attorney General files a lawsuit on behalf of the government and is found to be frivolous, he is personally liable. That's what you ought to recommend, that be added to the bill. See how quickly he's going to withdraw it.
No, that's a very good point, because I have known of some judges on a very infrequent occasions have indicated that costs must be paid by the lawyer who brought this nonsensical.
That's right, exactly.
And that also helps in the process of cleansing the court bonds with any frivolous matters. This has been especially important. We are on to, I think, time. It has been a very wonderful. We have about 4 minutes left. I want to say that how successful also was that U.S. Congressional Caucus meeting. Now, I understand that you were also at one of those meetings.
Yes.
Just give me a couple 4 minutes remarks so that we can bring
Yes, and
people.
of course I just want to dispute that. Of course, it become public knowledge now that the vice president was essentially lying or ignorant when he was mentioning that, well, there wasn't any meeting with the congressional delegation, and then of course the minority
Henry
leader came
Jeffries.
out with and said, and then did you see his latest thing? He said that somehow Ford was dishonest in sending in declaring that he said that there wasn't any meeting. He's saying that, well, Ford was dishonest in saying that, and it's all over the place that he said that. But anyway, yes, there were at least two very productive meetings. One with the delegation that came from the United States, which is the opposition from both the APNU, with including the leader of the opposition, and we had a strong team also from the what is it, like
Diaspora.
four or five of us, no, from the AFC as part of that
Yeah.
opposition team. And then so the congressional leaders had a meeting with them, and then the next day they had a meeting with the diaspora members, and with including myself and some others. And one of the things, at least in our meeting, was that they will be doing a fact-finding mission. It was recommended by us, and then they said, sure, they agreed to conduct a fact-finding mission, because we were very honest. They said, hey, you don't have to believe us. So we were inviting you to come and see for yourself. We're not hiding anything from you. Here are the things we're giving you in terms of the data and all this stuff. Nobody asks for any data, by the way. That's just propaganda. They're saying that you've provided us with all this data, and we were the ones. They didn't say that they're going to be coming. We're the ones who said, we would like for you to come and do your own independent verification. And if you find that that's not the case, that's fine with us. So we're the one who asked for the fact-finding mission, rather than them just taking our data and going with it. But it was very, very productive, and I think the vice president and the president know that. And that is why they're so much in a tizzy and talking about it all the time, because they knew that these folks now have the facts and let the chips fall where it may. And that's what they're scared of, as to where the chips are going to fall.
And I want to end on this score, because they give the impression that we have no influence at the international level.
Yep.
And when we are proving to them that we have influence with literally the leader of the House of Representatives, Jeffries,
Yep.
they now want to deny all of that and to kind of make it diminished in credibility. But of course, they're looking foolish. And Barbicians must understand that if it is one thing that the PPP frighten, is international influence. They're going to take their eyes on past we Guyanese. But when we carry it over there, and that probably is how these third world countries' leaders operate too. Because I remember one time when I was in the PPP at that time, and Chedi Jagan was going overseas. Remember, in the 1990s period? You should know that.
Yep.
Oh, the PNC started getting scatterbrained at that point in time. And so it is important that we understand. We want to take things like these contracts and the corruption that is massive, because there are many writers in America who understand the corruption in contracts, infrastructure contract, because you get it sometimes in America too, right? But they want countries like Guyana, who must benefit from the monies that the oil is going to give. And even if it is their company, ExxonMobil, that is robbing Guyanese, those congressmen will attack ExxonMobil, if you understand what I mean. Because they love to see justice, they love to see accountability, and they want transparency. And that is why in relation to this matter of the market report being from 214 million to 3 million, the opposition went and had a meeting with Alistair Rutledge. And Alistair Rutledge
Yes.
tell people, after the question was asked by David Patterson, is it true that the government reduced the amount from 214 to 3? And Rutledge admitted indeed that the government and them worked it out to $3 million. Could you believe Rutledge's statement that it is the government and Exxon that saw it reduced to that level? So it is not Bobby Gosai. Government means ministers, and the minister in charge of oil is Jagdeo and Vikram Udit and Vikram Bharat. Them is the set of people. No, they gonna put it. So they are caught with their pants down.
Yes.
You know, and so it is important. But they can come with a baby face and lie, especially that one called Jagdeo. Lie to the public that it is Bobby Jagdeo. And he plays a big thing, you know, that, hey, I don't understand what happened here. We have to order an investigation. Investigation. And he didn't know what happened. They ain't got nothing inside of this big oil monies and so on that Jagdeo will know about.
Yep.
But you're gonna comedy baby. Yeah.
And to add to that, Cameron, here's what's incredible about this. What he's saying, it goes from 214 million to 3 million. The 214 million is this big international company that came up with this number. What he is saying is that Exxon is because 3 million of 214 million is almost 100%.
That's right.
So he's saying that he didn't even say, well, half of it. You know, normally they would say, well, okay, let me bust the thing 50-50 or something to make it look a little bit. He's saying that IHS Markit was 100% wrong.
That's right.
And Exxon somehow was 100% right. I mean, how could you believe, you know? So those are the kinds of things that are just totally ridiculous. And that is why he cannot be a darling of any credible, you know, press. No, he can't. He can't.
Nobody believes him these days.
That's
but
right.
Our time is up. I just got an indication. Our time is up. Thank you, Babishans. And we will continue to bring all this corruption that the PPP is involved in, contracts and IMH's market report and all of that, so that you can understand the issues and you can be better informed as a result. And because of that information, you will make better judgments as to who is genuine, who is transparent, who is accountable, who is doing good governance. Thank you, and have a very good night. Take care.
Thank you, Kemajan. Thanks the audience for listening.
Yes.